Hello, and thank you very much for your interest in the exhibition Behind the Wire, Civilian Internment in the British Empire, 1914 to 1919. This has come out of close cooperation between Aston University in Birmingham and Archaeology Scotland. In this short introduction, I'll explain a little bit about the topic area as a whole and also introduce you into the exhibition and other public engagement activities attached to this topic area. Now, during the First World War, around 50,000 enemy aliens were interned in camps throughout the empire. These were civilians, mostly emigrants from Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, who had come to British Empire locations during the 19th century and were now labeled enemy aliens and interned in camps throughout the world. The biggest camp in the empire was on the Isle of Man. You can read here on this print, civilian prisoner camp Nokelo, Isle of Man. This held around 22,000 internees. When it comes to archaeological remains of these camps, Nokelo is pretty typical, meaning virtually nothing is being left. When you look at this area today, you just wouldn't know that a camp ever existed on this site. You have to look very closely in order to find some remains, and here are some walls in the area. These are these kind of walls, and on some of these walls you still see the broken up concrete foundations upon which the former prisoners' huts were built, but apart from that, virtually nothing. This is a picture which is typical around the world. Just one more example. This is the Holsworthy camp in Australia near Sydney. Was the biggest camp during the First World War in Australia. And this is what the area looks like today. It's basically one big housing estate, a suburb of Sydney. So when we compare this global picture with the former campsite in Scotland, we've got a very different picture there. Namely, we do have quite a significant amount of archaeological remains. The biggest camp there was Stobs near Hawick. Again, here you see an historical picture from the First World War, and this is what the area looks like today. As you can see straight away, we've got the hut foundations, we've got the foundations of walls here, the terraces on which the huts were built, and some buildings that were attached to the camp infrastructure. And uniquely, we do have a former prisoner's hut. So all in all, if you compare this with other sites around the world, we have to say that Stobs contains the best preserved site of a purpose-built World War I internment camp, probably in the world. Now, this was an opportunity for the local archive, the Scottish Borders Archive, to make a little bit more of this unique archaeological site. So we applied for some funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and the HRC has now funded a range of public engagement activities. All of these are summed up on this website, so if you want to learn a little bit more, do visit this website. So we've got the Internment Research Center, which makes sources accessible, both in analog and digital form. There's also a library devoted to the topic of internment throughout the ages, throughout the world, in the Scottish Borders Archive. And the unique aspect is really the proximity to the actual archaeological site. So you can visit the archive in the morning, and in the afternoon you can visit the former campsite. This is pretty unique in the world. Other activities attached to the projects were large-scale translations of German texts into English. The sources coming out of the camps were obviously mostly written in German. Those were letters, camp newspapers, and diaries mostly. So we translated many of those and put them online. Again, they are accessible through this website. Another strand of the project were theatre productions. There was quite a lively cultural life in these camps. So we we recreated one of these theatre plays and put it on stage in Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Hawick, had 3 wonderful performances. Another strand was an education pack for primary schools in Scotland and South Africa, and also for prison education centers in Scotland. And the last strand, and this is what's connected to the Festival of Archaeology now, is the exhibition. The exhibition was shown in museums, galleries, and libraries in Scotland, Ireland, England, Canada, the United States, and South Africa, and on the whole attracted 20,000 visitors. It was opened in November 2018, centenary of the end of the war, in Hawick Museum in Scotland. This just gives you one impression. Here, just 3 panels out of the total of 18. These panels were hung all across the museum, and they were combined with local artifacts, which were displayed in glass cases like these. These were, again, texts, letters, but also handicraft products such as wood carvings produced by the internees themselves and then contextualized within the exhibition. Just 2 more examples. This one was from Oldcastle Public Library in Ireland. This is a little bit north of Dublin. Oldcastle is a fairly small town which hosted the biggest camp in Ireland, and this really sums up the conceptualization of the exhibition. The exhibition shows or explains the global context, but by showing the exhibition in places where actual camps existed, local populations or local people who are interested in this story actually get a deeper, more global sense of their local history. So what we are trying to connect is really the global history of World War I with local histories. The same is true for Peter Marit's book in South Africa, which hosted the biggest camp in Africa actually, and the local KwaZulu-Natal Museum, which is one of the 5 big national museums, currently shows the exhibition. If you want to learn a little bit more about the topic area, this is a book which I've written over the last 5 years, actually in parallel with the public engagement activities, and this book has just come out. Now, do enjoy the exhibition. I hope you enjoy the panels, the material on the panels and the text, and hope you enjoy the Festival of Archaeology as a whole. Thanks very much for listening.